Have you ever wondered how a single bale of cotton could become one of the most important economic stories in Africa? At sunrise, on a quiet farm in western Burkina Faso, workers carefully lift freshly harvested cotton onto an aging truck. At first glance, it looks like another ordinary day, another ordinary harvest, another shipment heading toward a familiar market. But this journey is different. That single bale is beginning a trip along a trade route that could reshape how Burkina Faso connects with the Atlantic, how African producers negotiate with global buyers, and perhaps even how the world looks at African agriculture in the years ahead. For decades, Burkina Faso has been known as one of Africa's leading cotton producers. Yet many of the greatest rewards from that cotton have often been captured far beyond the country's borders. Today, however, a different question is beginning to emerge. What if the future of Burkina Faso is no longer determined by how much cotton it grows, but by where that cotton travels, who buys it, and how much value the country can keep before it ever leaves African soil? At the very moment, new trade corridors are opening across parts of Africa. Many of the world's largest economies are facing growing uncertainty over tariffs, disrupted supply chains, and changing international trade relationships. Two very different economic stories are unfolding at the same time. If you enjoy thoughtful African news that goes beyond today's headlines, subscribe and stay with us, because the biggest turning point in this story has not happened yet. So how can one ordinary shipment of cotton become the beginning of a much larger transformation for Burkina Faso, and perhaps for Africa itself? The journey begins long before the truck ever reaches the road. For families across Burkina Faso, cotton is more than a seasonal crop. It is school fees. It is medical care. It is the hope that months of hard work under the scorching sun will finally bring a better future. Every harvest carries the weight of countless early mornings, uncertain weather, and the determination of people who refuse to give up on their land. Among them is a farmer we will simply call Musa. Like many growers across the country, he does not spend his days thinking about international trade corridors or global supply chains. His focus is simple: grow a healthy crop, deliver it on time, earn enough to support his family. Yet without realizing it, Musa has become part of a much larger story. As workers secure the cotton onto an old truck, the destination no longer represents just another collection point. The cargo is now part of a changing logistics network that could eventually give Burkina Faso greater access to Atlantic trade routes and a broader range of international markets. While some elements of this vision remain part of future economic development, the direction itself reflects a growing regional ambition to strengthen trade connectivity and reduce transport bottlenecks across West Africa. That may sound like a technical change. It is not, because every additional buyer creates another conversation. Every shorter transport route creates another opportunity, and every new commercial option strengthens a country's ability to negotiate instead of simply accepting whatever price is offered. For decades, Burkina Faso has earned global recognition as one of Africa's leading cotton producers. Yet much of the highest value has traditionally been created after the cotton leaves the farm. It is cleaned, spun into yarn, woven into fabric, manufactured into clothing, and sold around the world. By the time the finished products reach store shelves, their value can be many times higher than the price originally paid to the farmer. That raises an important question. Should Burkina Faso remain known only for producing raw cotton, or should it gradually become known for creating more of that value at home? Across Africa, this question is becoming increasingly important. Governments are discussing industrial development, regional manufacturing, and stronger economic partnerships that allow African countries to trade more with one another before looking beyond the continent. It is not simply about selling more products. It is about keeping more opportunity where those products begin. For Musa, none of these discussions appear on his farm. He notices something much simpler: more trucks, new storage facilities, growing conversations about investment, people speaking with cautious optimism about roads that connect farther than they once did. Perhaps, for the first time in many years, the harvest feels connected to something larger than the next payment. It feels connected to possibility. And that possibility arrives at a moment when international trade itself is entering a period of uncertainty. Around the world, governments are debating tariffs, supply chains, and shifting commercial alliances. While many economies are searching for ways to protect existing markets, several African nations are asking a different question: how can they create new ones? The truck carrying Musa's cotton continues toward its next destination. But before that cotton ever reaches the Atlantic, an even bigger decision is waiting. Will Burkina Faso simply export another harvest? Or is it preparing to export something far more valuable than cotton itself? As Musa's truck continues its journey, the story quietly changes. Just a few hours earlier, we were following a single bale of cotton. Now, we are following something much larger. A new idea. For generations, geography shaped Africa's trade. Farmers worked the land. Traders crossed long distances. Goods often followed routes designed decades ago, sometimes serving priorities established far beyond the communities producing the crops themselves. For many exporters, there were limited options, limited negotiating power, and limited control over how products reached international buyers. But history rarely changes with a single announcement. It changes when new roads begin carrying new possibilities. That is why economists are paying close attention to emerging Atlantic trade connections. They are not simply looking at maps. They are looking at leverage. Imagine two identical cotton producers. The first has only one practical export route. The second can choose between several transport corridors, several ports, and several international buyers. Who has greater bargaining power? The answer has very little to do with cotton. It has everything to do with choice. Choice changes negotiations. Choice changes prices. And over time, choice can change national strategy. That is the opportunity many Africans now see beginning to emerge. Across the continent, conversations are no longer focused only on producing more crops. Increasingly, they are focused on connecting farms to highways, highways to railways, railways to ports, and ports to global markets. Every missing link in that chain has traditionally reduced the value African producers could capture. Every new connection has the potential to strengthen it. For many young entrepreneurs in Burkina Faso, this is becoming a different kind of conversation. Instead of asking, "Who will buy our cotton?" they are beginning to ask, "What else can we build around it?" Could cotton seed support new food industries? Could textile factories create thousands of skilled jobs? Could local processing keep more income inside the country? Could transport companies, storage businesses, packaging industries, and financial services all grow around the same agricultural supply chain? Suddenly, one harvest becomes an entire economic ecosystem. That shift represents something far greater than better logistics. It represents a different way of thinking about development. Instead of exporting opportunity, keep more opportunity at home. Across villages, optimism begins spreading in quiet ways. Truck drivers speak about roads carrying more commercial traffic. Warehouse operators notice increasing activity. Young graduates discuss logistics, engineering, agricultural technology, and manufacturing instead of only searching for opportunities abroad. Parents who once hoped their children would leave in search of work begin wondering whether meaningful careers might one day exist much closer to home. No celebration fills the streets. No dramatic speeches dominate the headlines. Instead, confidence grows slowly. One investment, one warehouse, one road, one shipment at a time. This is often how real economic transformation begins, not with noise, but with consistency. And while these conversations are growing across parts of Africa, another conversation is unfolding thousands of miles away. Many developed economies continue wrestling with supply chain uncertainty, shifting tariff policies, rising production costs, and increasingly competitive global markets. Governments debate how to protect industries already under pressure. Businesses search for stability in an unpredictable trading environment. Meanwhile, parts of Africa are asking a different question. Not, how do we defend yesterday's economy? But, how do we build tomorrow's economy? That difference in mindset may become one of the most important stories of the next decade. For President Ibrahim Traore, supporters increasingly describe this moment as more than improving agricultural exports. They see it as part of a broader ambition to strengthen economic sovereignty by encouraging production, infrastructure, regional cooperation, and greater value creation within Africa itself. Whether every objective can be fully achieved remains uncertain, but the direction of the discussion is becoming increasingly clear. The destination is no longer simply higher export volumes. The destination is greater economic independence. And perhaps that explains why this single truck carrying Musa's cotton feels so symbolic. It is not carrying only fiber harvested from African soil. It is carrying expectations. It is carrying ambition. It is carrying the belief that Africa's greatest export may no longer be its raw materials, but its ability to shape its own economic future. And if that future truly begins with one bale of cotton, what happens when millions of bales start traveling the same road toward a very different Africa? If millions of cotton bales begin traveling this new path, The next question is no longer about transportation. It is about transformation, because every nation eventually reaches the same crossroads. Do you continue exporting what comes out of the ground, or do you begin exporting what comes out of your factories? That question may define Burkina Faso's next chapter. For decades, the country has earned respect as one of Africa's leading cotton producers. Year after year, farmers have delivered harvests that reached markets across the world. Yet, after the cotton crossed international borders, something remarkable happened. The real value continued growing. Raw cotton became fine yarn. Yarn became fabric. Fabric became finished clothing. Finished clothing entered international brands. And with every step in that journey, more jobs were created. More skills were developed. More wealth remained where the next stage of production took place. Very little of that additional value ever returned to the communities where the cotton first began. That is exactly why today's conversation feels different. Supporters of President Ibrahim Traore increasingly speak not only about producing more, they speak about producing differently. Growing cotton is one achievement. Transforming cotton is another. Imagine the difference. Instead of watching hundreds of trucks leave carrying raw harvests, imagine industrial parks where cotton is cleaned, spun, woven, dyed, stitched, packaged, and prepared for international markets. Instead of exporting thousands of tons of fiber, Burkina Faso could gradually export uniforms, medical textiles, industrial fabrics, fashion products, finished goods carrying labels that proudly read, "Made in Burkina Faso." That single change could multiply economic opportunities far beyond agriculture. A textile factory does not only employ machine operators, it needs electricians, engineers, designers, mechanics, quality inspectors, logistics managers, software specialists, truck drivers, packaging companies, banks, insurance providers, training centers, universities. One industry begins supporting another, then another, until an entire industrial ecosystem starts taking shape. This is why economists often say that manufacturing changes nations differently than raw commodity exports. Agriculture feeds an economy. Industry strengthens it. For young people across Burkina Faso, that distinction could become life-changing. For years, countless graduates believed their future depended on leaving home. Many searched for opportunities in larger cities. Others dreamed of finding work overseas. But imagine a different future. Imagine graduating with engineering skills and finding work inside a modern textile plant built only a few hours from your hometown. Imagine logistics companies hiring thousands of young professionals to manage growing trade corridors. Imagine technology companies developing software that tracks shipments from farms to Atlantic ports. Imagine vocational schools expanding because manufacturers need more skilled workers every year. The conversation slowly changes. Instead of asking, "When should I leave?" young people begin asking, "What can I build here?" That question alone may become one of the greatest economic victories any nation can achieve. Across local communities, the effects reach even farther. Farmers gain more reliable buyers. Transport companies expand their fleets. Warehouses increase capacity. Construction firms build new industrial facilities. Restaurants serve growing workforces. Small businesses appear where opportunity begins to concentrate. Growth no longer belongs to one sector. It spreads, quietly, steadily, community by community. And perhaps most importantly, confidence begins replacing uncertainty. People invest when they believe tomorrow will be stronger than today. Families educate children when they believe new careers will exist. Businesses expand when they believe demand will continue growing. Hope itself becomes an economic asset. That may be one of the least discussed, yet most powerful, consequences of development. Not statistics, not headlines. Confidence. Of course, challenges remain. Building competitive industries requires reliable electricity, skilled workers, efficient regulations, investment, financing, and long-term planning. No country transforms its economy overnight, but every industrial success story begins with a decision to capture more value before products leave home. Perhaps that is the deeper meaning behind Musa's journey. His cotton is no longer just another harvest moving toward the Atlantic. It represents a larger question facing Burkina Faso. Should the nation remain known as one of the world's great cotton growers, or could it become one of Africa's emerging textile powers? And if that transformation truly begins to take shape, how will global markets respond when Africa is no longer exporting only its resources, but increasingly exporting its industries as well? If Burkina Faso succeeds in keeping more value at home, the impact will reach far beyond its own borders. Because every major economic shift begins with a simple question. What happens when a country that once supplied raw materials begins competing in higher value industries instead? That question is no longer limited to Burkina Faso. It echoes across the entire African continent. For decades, global trade followed a familiar pattern. Africa exported raw materials. Other regions transformed them into finished products. The finished products were then sold back into international markets at far higher prices. For many countries, that system became the accepted way of doing business. But accepted does not always mean permanent. Today, a different conversation is quietly gaining momentum. Across the Sahel and beyond, governments are discussing stronger regional cooperation, improved transport infrastructure, expanded industrial capacity, and greater economic resilience. Supporters of these efforts believe that Africa's long-term prosperity may depend not only on producing more resources, but also on capturing more of the value created from them before they leave the continent. If that vision gradually becomes reality, international markets will naturally begin paying closer attention, not because Africa is creating conflict, but because Africa is creating competition. Competition changes investment decisions. Competition changes supply chains. Competition changes pricing power. And perhaps most importantly, competition changes perception. For many years, international discussions about Africa often centered on aid, humanitarian challenges, or political instability. Increasingly, another image is beginning to appear: investment, manufacturing, infrastructure, regional trade, innovation, young entrepreneur, modern logistics, agricultural technology. These stories may not always dominate global headlines, but investors notice them, manufacturers notice them, shipping companies notice them, financial institutions notice them. Because markets rarely ignore opportunity for very long, meanwhile, many advanced economies continue adapting to changing global conditions. Businesses face higher production costs. Supply chains remain under pressure. Trade relationships continue evolving. Governments debate tariffs, strategic industries, and economic security with growing urgency. Against that backdrop, every new production center, every new transport corridor, and every expanding regional market becomes increasingly significant. This is not about one nation replacing another. Global trade has never worked that way. Strong economies continue trading with one another. New partnerships emerge. Old partnerships evolve. The countries that adapt most effectively are often those willing to invest in long-term competitiveness rather than short-term advantage. That may become Burkina Faso's greatest opportunity, not replacing existing markets, but joining them from a stronger position. Imagine a future where international buyers no longer visit Burkina Faso only to purchase raw cotton. Imagine them investing in textile manufacturing, research centers, training institutes, industrial equipment, renewable energy supporting factories, digital logistics connecting producers directly with customers around the world. Suddenly, the conversation changes once again. People are no longer asking, how much cotton does Burkina Faso produce? They begin asking, what can Burkina Faso manufacture next? That single shift in perception could influence an entire generation of investment decisions. For supporters of President Ibrahim Traore, this possibility represents something even larger than economic growth. It represents dignity. The dignity of creating, the dignity of producing, the dignity of competing through knowledge, skill, and innovation rather than remaining dependent on exporting raw resources alone. Whether every ambition is achieved remains a question only time can answer. Economic transformation is never simple. Markets rise, markets fall, governments change. Unexpected challenges always appear. Yet history consistently rewards countries that prepare before opportunity fully arrives. And perhaps that is exactly what Burkina Faso is attempting to do today, preparing for an economy that does not simply harvest wealth, but creates it. Because once the world begins seeing Burkina Faso not only as a supplier of cotton, but as a builder of industries, the next chapter may no longer belong to Burkina Faso alone. It may inspire how Africa imagines its own economic future. But one final question still remains. If this new path continues to expand over the next decade, will Africa become a stronger participant in the global economy? Or will this be remembered as the moment when the continent finally began writing its own economic story? As our journey comes to an end, let us return to where it all began. A single bale of cotton, an old truck, a Kiwit farm in Burkina Faso, At first, it seemed like an ordinary story, but perhaps it never was, because this has never been only about cotton. It has been about confidence. It has been about choice. And above all, it has been about the belief that a nation can gradually build a stronger future with the resources, the people, and the determination it already possesses. No single trade corridor can transform an economy overnight. No government can erase decades of challenges in just a few years. And no development strategy succeeds without the hard work of millions of ordinary people. But history often changes when a country begins asking different questions. Not, what can we sell today? But, what can we build for tomorrow? That may be the real story unfolding in Burkina Faso. If new transport corridors continue expanding, if more investment reaches agriculture and local industry, if education keeps producing skilled workers, if entrepreneurs continue finding opportunities at home, then the greatest export of Burkina Faso may no longer be cotton alone. It may be confidence. Confidence that young people can build successful careers without leaving their homeland. Confidence that farmers can earn more from every harvest. Confidence that African industries can compete through quality, innovation, and determination. And confidence that the next generation will inherit more opportunities than the one before it. Perhaps that is why this story matters far beyond one country. Because when one African nation discovers a stronger path forward, others begin asking whether they can follow a similar road. Progress inspires progress. Success creates confidence. And confidence has a remarkable way of crossing borders. Looking ahead, my own view is one of careful optimism. Burkina Faso still faces real challenges. Economic transformation requires time, stability, investment, and patient leadership. There will undoubtedly be obstacles, unexpected setbacks, and difficult decisions along the way. But every lasting transformation begins with a clear direction. From everything we have explored today, the most important change may not be a new road to the Atlantic. It may be a new mindset. A mindset that believes Africa should not only produce resources, but also produce prosperity. At the beginning of this story, we asked whether one bale of cotton could change Africa's bargaining power. Now we have our answer. By itself? No. But millions of people making better decisions, building stronger industries, investing in their own communities, and believing in their own future, that is what changes nations. And perhaps one day, when history looks back on this period, it will remember that the journey toward a stronger Burkina Faso did not begin inside a conference hall. It began quietly, on a cotton farm, with people who simply believed tomorrow could be better than today. If this story gave you hope for the future of Burkina Faso and Africa, let your voice become part of this conversation. Share your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe Burkina Faso should focus on exporting more raw materials, or should it invest even more boldly in building industries that create lasting value at home? Your perspective may inspire someone else to see this story from a new angle. And before you leave, wherever you are watching from, take a moment to join us in one simple hope. May God bless Africa. May God bless Burkina Faso. May God grant wisdom and strength to Ibrahim Traore and to every leader, farmer, worker, entrepreneur, and young dreamer striving to build a more prosperous future. And may He bless all those around the world who stand for dignity, peace, cooperation, and justice. Thank you for watching, and until our next African News analysis, may hope continue to travel farther than fear. Just as that single bale of cotton began a journey that reminded us all that the future is built one step, one harvest, and one generation at a time.